Hi, can you hear me?
Hello.
Okay, hi. So, okay, let's talk about your paper here. And so let me open up your paper, and I think that's it here. So click here, and let me see how to call up this paper as quickly as possible. Go here. Okay, here's your paper. So, this is being recorded, of course, when I finish. I'll send you the recording, link to the recording later. So you right here, typically the Vietnam War, the confrontation between Republicans and, okay, so like I tell all of my students, like one of my tasks here is to try to work with you to improve your already excellent English to make it even better than it already is, and to use my background as a native speaker to help you think through how you might want to improve your English. But of course, it's better for you to choose how you might want to say something rather than me just tell you how I would write it, because you don't really learn very much that way. Instead, you should feel like you're choosing how you want to say it, and that way you're more likely to learn. So typically, like when I make these suggestions as to how to improve the English, I offer two suggestions, and you can choose either one, or you can do whatever you want. But I want you to think about how you would prefer to say it. So typically, if you write the Vietnam War, the confrontation between Republicans and Democrats, or Republican leaders and Democratic leaders, either one's okay. Which one do you prefer?
No as Republican readers and Democratic readers.
Okay, all right. So then I would cut that out here, and I'll let you clean this up so that you can choose how you want to fix it up. So let me go like this and go like this, go like here. And all right. So let me cut that out like that, like this, like that. Okay. And social movements, progressive social movements. Which do you prefer?
Progressive social movement.
Okay, yeah, and that's a good point, because you can say that the right-wing Trump phenomenon is a product of progressive right-wing social movement. So progressive typically is a nice way of saying leftist movements. So do that, okay, and progressive social movements, okay. Diminished America's economic power and national influence, and challenged America's confidence in both. First, in the case of the Vietnam War, the U.S. was weakened economically, and the U.S. behavior was heavily criticized both at home and abroad. At home and abroad, either one's okay. It's whichever you choose, and of course you can always change your mind. It's up to you. So both at or at home and abroad, both at home and abroad, or at home and abroad. Which do you prefer?
Or just at.
Okay, at home and abroad. All right, so I'll let you clean that up. Okay, at home and abroad. Contrary to expectation of the United States, as the Vietnam War prolonged, the United States invested more military power and countless victims occurred. The excessive investment of the U.S. in external war had raised voices against the U.S. war, not only at home, but also abroad. According to page 469 of People's History of the United States, there developed in the United States the greatest anti-war movement the nation ever experienced. Okay. Next, the confrontation between Republicans and Democrats, or Republican and Republican and Democrat self-identifiers. Which do you prefer?
Republican and Democrat self-identification.
Okay, self-identifier. All right. Diminished America's power, economic power, and international influence. In particular, both parties competed to spend more money on military defense. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I say, did they? When exactly? By the end of the, so they, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. By the, when Jimmy Carter won the election in 1976 by defeating Gerald Ford, who was Richard Nixon's vice president. there's a number of reasons, not one reason, but a number of reasons why Jimmy Carter won the election in 1976, just like there are a number of reasons why, Donald Trump surprisingly won the election in 2016. And one of the reasons why Jimmy Carter won, not the only reason, was that Gerald Ford, one of the first things Gerald Ford did when he was president was he issued a pardon to Richard Nixon for any crimes that President Nixon may have committed while he was president of the United States, and that caused a number of voters to turn against Gerald Ford because they thought Richard Nixon should have been punished for the things he did, but he was never punished. He was never put on trial. He was never prosecuted, and so. Jimmy Carter won the election in 1976, partly for that reason. He also, of course, advocated Jimmy Carter moving away from a focus on Cold War containment of the Soviet Union, which, from the point of view of Jimmy Carter and his supporters, was a big reason for the Vietnam disaster, that the United States was too focused on containment of the Soviet Union, seeing communist expand imperialism everywhere in the world, and as a result, becoming obsessed with containing communism that led to disasters like the Vietnam War. So Jimmy Carter, he proposed he was going to focus more on promoting human rights as America's foreign policy objective. And that meant you didn't need as big a military. If you're not going to focus on containment of the Soviet Union as a big, terrible threat that's causing most of the trouble in the world, like Ronald Reagan would later say in 1983 in his Evil Empire speech, then you don't need as big a military. So Jimmy Carter reduced the size of the military. Of course, many people opposed what Jimmy Carter was doing. They thought, okay, the Vietnam War obviously was a setback, but still the Soviet Union and its allies are a danger to the United States. And again, I mention all these things because they're really very much important for comparing with what the kind of rhetoric and words coming out of Washington in 2021 today, right? First off, Donald Trump is being prosecuted. Not unlike Richard Nixon, nobody's pardoned Donald Trump for the crimes he may have committed when he was president or before he was president. Now, Joe Biden is not going to pardon Donald Trump, but if Joe Biden loses in 2024 to a Republican, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised, as I was just thinking about this with a previous student, if a Republican president in 2024, if he wins election and comes into office in 2025, if he wouldn't pardon Donald Trump. But we'll see. That's not really relevant to this discussion right now. But many people are arguing that, okay, the Soviet Union is gone, but we now have China, and anybody who is going to focus more on human rights and withdrawing America's commitments from the world, they're opening up the United States to expansion of Chinese influence, sort of like how Jimmy Carter opened up the world to expansion of Soviet influence because Jimmy Carter wimped out and was a sissy and reacted to the tragedy of Vietnam, which was a result of democratic presidents. Not Richard Nixon tried to save America's influence in the world. He faced all of this opposition, not just from communists abroad, but from traitors at home, or not, if not traitors, then fools and degenerates who undermined Richard Nixon's efforts to clean up the mess that a Democratic president, Lyndon Johnson, committed after he became president in 1965, after winning the 1964 elections. He, a Democratic president, sent the American Army and Marines into Vietnam to fight. And then it was Lyndon Johnson whose Great Society programs expanded the size of the American welfare state and began and contributed to the weakening of America's fundamental values that made America great, that would lead to the problems of the 1970s and Jimmy Carter making them worse. And it was Ronald Reagan who saved America. But Jimmy Carter, but the point I want to go back to is that Jimmy Carter became president, and while he was president, then there were revolutionary actions and revolutionary regimes came to power in conservative, corrupt, pro-American governments like in Nicaragua. The Sandinista movement overthrew the Somoza dictatorship, family dictatorship ruling in Nicaragua, led by, one of the leaders was Daniel Ortega, who's now the president of Nicaragua today. And Grenada had a socialist revolution, and socialists, self-proclaimed socialists and communists came to power in Angola, former Portuguese colony in Africa, and Mozambique, another former Portuguese colony in Africa. And pro-Soviet regimes came to power in Somalia and Ethiopia. And if you're a supporter of Richard Nixon or the Republicans, you say, see, this idiot, Jimmy Carter, this fool, this buffoon comes to power, and he takes America's focus away from the Soviet Union. And the result is, of course, the Soviet Union exploited the situation to expand even into Central America, beyond Cuba into Nicaragua. And while also trying to expand also into El Salvador and other places in Central America. And then, of course, America's ally, the Shah of Iran, who had been America's close ally since 1953, partly because the CIA helped put him in power in 1953, CIA-led coup. And he's overthrown, and then the United States allows their longtime ally, client, agent, the Shah, to come to America after he resigns from his dictatorship in Iran. He tries to come to America to be treated for cancer. He's sick. And when that happens, the Iranian revolutionaries seize control of the US embassy in Tehran. They hold American diplomats hostage for 444 days. And Jimmy Carter is unable to get them released. And this is yet another humiliation among those sections of American society that pay close attention to American foreign policy. Many of them said, oh, this guy, Jimmy Carter, look what, and Carter responded, because Carter's worried about the 1980 election and in November 1980. So, and then of course, also the Soviet Union invades Afghanistan in December 1979. The Soviet Union invades Afghanistan because the pro-Soviet regime in Afghanistan is going to be overthrown by the Islamic resistance in Afghanistan. And so the Soviet Union invades to get rid of the regime that's not able, the ruler in Afghanistan who's not able to prevent the Islamists from winning, and because he can't handle the situation. And from the point of view of the opponents of Jimmy Carter, this all looked like it was Jimmy Carter's fault. This is all Jimmy Carter's fault. And now Jimmy Carter's worried about what's going to happen in the 1980 elections. And so by the time 1980 comes, Jimmy Carter is talking like a Cold Warrior. He's another focus on containment. He rebuilt, he spends more money on the American military. He refocuses America on containment. And so by the time the end of the Carter administration in 1980, there's not much difference between Carter and Reagan in terms of their refocus on the military. So you say both parties compete to spend more money on military defense, but that's by the end of the Carter administration. And it's not enough to save Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter loses to Ronald Reagan. Primarily, probably because he can't get the American hostages released that Iran is holding on, the Iranian revolutionaries are holding on to. And the Iranian revolutionaries will release those hostages only on the same day that Ronald Reagan becomes president in January 20th, 1981. That's when the Iranians release the hostages. So, but again, but Jimmy Carter of 1980 was very different from the Jimmy Carter of 1977. When Jimmy Carter becomes the president, he's inaugurated in January 1977. Jimmy Carter of 1977 is very different from the Jimmy Carter of 1980. And I guess the reason why that point is important to keep in mind, because the same kind of criticisms are being made about the Biden administration, right? That the Biden administration talked about, or Joe Biden talked about how he's going to be different from Donald Trump and he's going to change Donald Trump's policies. But when you look at what Joe Biden is doing at the first 10 or 11 months of his presidency, well, not even 10 months. I mean, it's been, 10 months of his presidency or 11 months of his presidency. It's not that different from Trump. He talks differently, but he's increased the size of the military. That was just announced today or yesterday, that the US military budget's the biggest it has been since the Second World War under Joe Biden. The Biden administration has not removed the sanction, the economic tariffs on China that Trump put on 4 years ago. The Biden administration is sending, continuing to send military aid to Ukraine, but that began under Trump, before Trump. Trump didn't stop it, and even though Trump talked more kindly about Putin, more cooperatively about Russia and Putin, so there's these deep forces at work within America involving vast numbers of political and economic interests that seem to be driving American foreign policy more so than what Carter says or what Trump says or what Biden says, right? I mean, individual presidents are important, but there seems to be something deeper at work here. And what presidents can do, or people who want to become president can do, they can try to respond to and rise to and use those trends, but they seem not to be able to stop them. Not to mention create them. They can't create them, and they have very difficult challenges on stopping them, blocking them. Maybe they can shape them a little bit this way and that way. So Biden is more willing to publicly cooperate with with our American allies against China, more so than Trump could. And that's significant. But the point I'm trying to make is that this rise of Trump, it had its roots long before Trump. It had its roots in the rise of American nationalism during the Cold War and then after the Cold War. And I think a critical moment was the reaction to the Vietnam War. Right, that loss of the Vietnam War triggered intense American nationalist hostility, polarization, and American nationalist response that politicians ever since have been exploiting, including most recently Trump. And even Biden, because even Biden seems to be willing to accept that the United States won the Cold War. Yay! Despite losing the Vietnam conflict, overall, America finally won the Cold War. And that means America should provide leadership in dealing with China, because China is ruled by the Communist Party. Yeah, so, you never see, I mean, even under Trump or under Biden, the military budget is never cut. Jimmy Carter tried to cut the budget, and he's seen as, not by everybody, but the prevailing view in the US, he's still alive, right? He's in his mid-90s. He's going to die pretty soon, but he's still alive. That he was a failure. That Jimmy Carter was a failure. And what did Jimmy Carter do? He cut the defense budget. And so no president wants to be seen as a failure, even Joe Biden. So, I mean, it's the strangest thing. Like the Biden administration made a request for military budget to the US Congress, and then the US Congress added more money to it. A democratically controlled Congress added another $24 billion on top of what Biden administration asked for. Another 24 billion. We talk about this in the US foreign policy class I'm teaching this semester. I mean, why did they add more money? Because it helps those Congress people get reelected. You know, the military employs lots of people in the, and lots of contractors who supply the military, and all of these Cold War security interests continue to exist and grow and develop, and they're going to of course try to justify why they exist. And they're all pointing to China, but you need us. We defeated the Soviet Union, and now we need to deal with China. And anybody who doesn't understand that is a sissy like Jimmy Carter, a fool like Jimmy Carter. And the last thing Joe Biden wants to be considered as a fool, particularly since he wants to get reelected in 2024, and make sure that Trump doesn't become president again. And so, you know, Biden knows all of this. He knows that there's these nationalist trends at work in America, that he has to be careful in terms of how he confronts them, right? He doesn't want to confront them too badly. He wants to be a liberal nationalist. He doesn't want to be a populist conservative nationalist. He wants to promote America's influence in the world because he wants the Americans to continue to support American power and prestige on behalf of human rights. And America is supposed to be the leader for human rights against bad communist China, and the Islamic militants. But what to do about the Taliban and Afghanistan? I mean, that's a big setback for Joe Biden, because that reminded people of Vietnam. We lost that war. And Joe Biden is hoping that we sort of all forget about that. And maybe we will, because China is a bigger problem. But the point is, the United States nationalism is looking for bigger problems. And if you're Donald Trump, you know this. You're any kind of politician who's ambitious, and all politicians in America are ambitious. They want power. They know that you have to, if you can find and play with this China threat issue, that you're more likely to get all of these American nationalists and American forces around American nationalism supporting you. And this is a really dangerous time. And and of course, you know, the people that support Trump, they tend to claim that, why did we win the Cold War? Was it because of the feminists? Was it because of the LGBTQ rights movement? Was it because of the women's liberation movement? Was it because of the environmentalist movement and the human rights, global human rights? What defeated the evil empire, the Soviet Union? It was traditional conservative American values. So this competition between Democrats and Republicans today is a competition about moving American nationalism to associate either with liberal pro-human rights values versus associating American nationalism with conservative America first values. But the point is that they're both committed to American nationalism. How do you promote America's interests and influence in the world? Do you do it with allies, or do you do it on your own in dealing with challenges to America? And Biden is committed to promoting American influence by working with America's allies. But if you're going to have allies, you need to have an adversary. Who's your enemy? It's going to be Russia and China. And Trump and the Trump supporters, they might say, well, we don't need our allies, we don't have to accommodate and pay off our allies, give them what they want, because Russia and China are not naturally enemies. I mean, Russia is not a natural enemy. Russia's European. Why aren't we allied with Russia against China? If we're going to ally against China, we should be allied with it. If we're going to be focus on China, why is Russia our enemy? I mean, they're Europeans. They're Christians. The Cold War is over. The Soviet Union's gone. And Russia, you know, of course they're going to dominate Ukraine. Of course, they're going to dominate the former Soviet Union because that was all part of the Russian Empire for hundreds of years. So we stop focusing so much on Russia's internal human rights problems. That's for the Russians to solve. The Russians have to deal with the legacy of Stalinism and communism. That's how the Russians have to fix their own problems. We don't have to make Russia an enemy. And we can make lots of money in Russia because it's got lots of oil and gas and natural resources. And if anybody's a problem, it's China. But even that, why do we need to accommodate European imports and South Korea imports, taking American jobs away, when we can just focus on our own interests without having to portray ourselves as fighting for human rights, when we really don't care all that much about human rights anyway. When you see what, for example, it's not really something we can focus on, and we shouldn't focus on it. And if we do focus on it, it's just going to get us into more trouble like we were in Afghanistan. I mean, for the longest time, Americans were in Afghanistan claiming they were there after they invaded Afghanistan and Osama bin Laden was killed, because now we have to build a democracy in Afghanistan. And it was a joke. It was a fiasco. And it was Trump that made the move to get America out of Afghanistan. Stop using this human rights BS that Jimmy Carter started talking about to justify and explain what we're doing, because it doesn't work. Except, of course, we're going to use it to attack China because China's a problem. China, I mean, what do we care about the Taliban or Somalia? We care about China because China's big and China's a problem. But we don't care about these Islamists in Afghanistan and in Somalia. Who cares? Why should we care about that? So it's an argument about how to promote American influence and interest in the world, about whether or not we need to focus on human rights as a concern. And Joe Biden is all in about human rights, but he's also all in about American nationalism. And he's not going to make that same mistake that Carter made. He's going to focus on China, that there is a problem. That problem is China. But to deal with the China problem, we need the human rights weapon. And he's emphasizing that more than Trump did. Okay, we're running out of time. Do you have any questions?
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Please see, I only see 2 chapters, information.
Oh,
2 chapters.
yes.
Okay, so you'll fix that, right?
Okay, I will.
Okay. So I have to stop there because I got to go to the next class, next student. Oh, hold it. Who's next? Oh, yeah, I have another one coming up. Okay, so I need to, another student here. And, okay, so sent here. And here we go. And to here. And we go here. And I think I saved that. Yeah, here we go. And send. Okay. Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you.